present session, they are to know the nature and type of teaching learning resources and evolve a suitable strategy for identification of appropriate teaching learning. As I stated that the teaching learning process should be in the nature of engagement of learners. We are speaking about the quality education. When we go through NEP 2020, we can see that the most quality of schooling depends upon. It doesn't depend upon when we get very good students or we get qualified teachers. This doesn't make the sense of quality in true nature. So what is important is the quality of schooling. It depends to a great extent on management of teaching learning resources. What is the responsibility of the head of the school? That is important. The head of the school has the responsibility of ensuring the effective delivery of curriculum using all available resources. In this context, we can see that the best curriculum, if it is not transacted or delivered in a proper way, that will be a failure. Here comes the importance of the effective identification and should be needed to be available in a school. That in the daily classroom task, whether that resources are available. We can classify the resources as physical resources, human resources, material resources, and financial resources. Let us know that the human resources includes the teachers, the students, the staffs, the menial staffs, so the supporting staffs. All the staffs are included under the human resources. So here, what is important under the human resources, when we look at, we can see that the main thing, the teachers, students, and supporting staff. Let's take the case of the teachers. The teachers should be well qualified and the students should attain the criteria to get admission, and the supporting staff, that they should know the literacy of the supporting staff, the education of the supporting staff is important. How to deliver the things, how to do the task without wasting the time. So that is an important thing when we think of these human resources. Let us come to the next aspect, that is the physical resources. When we think of the physical resources, we know that when we look at the recognition of programs, the first aspect is, take the case of a BA program, suppose we want to start. So according to the norms of the NCT, what is important, that whether the organization has enough physical resources. So under the physical resources, the first thing that is important is school building. What about the building? The location of the building, the structure of the building. So when we think of the school building, the shape of the school building is important, whether it is I-shaped, H-shaped or L-shaped. So the school building, the structure is very much important. Next thing that is important is playground. Let us think of a school which is not having the playground, that we know that NEP 2020 is also emphasizing upon the holistic development of learners. So under this umbrella term, that the holistic development, what is important? Not only the building, the spacious, the space mentally where they can develop. We know the motto that a sound mind exists in a sound body. So this is very much important, that not only the cognitive aspects we have to concentrate. There we have to concentrate upon the cognitive domain, the affective domain, and the psychomotor domain. So this playground, this psychomotor, as well as through that they are getting some kind of affective aspects, recreational aspects, their sensory, that is important. And the next physical resources, when we think, that is coming under equipments. Take the case of science subjects, whether they subjects, in order to transact the curriculum properly, whether science labs are available, computer lab is available. So different kinds of labs are needed. So here the equipments is an important thing, and apparatus, whether it is available or just through verbal explanation, the teacher is teaching about a test tube or resources. What are the physical resources that is needed? So here we can see the physical resources in different ways, like the school building, playground, equipment, all those things comes under the physical resources. So the next resources, as stated, we can classify it as material resources, human resources, and financial resources. So here, as stated about the human resources we have seen, and then we are going to stated about the other resources which is important. So here what we can see is that the resources, when we think of that resources, what is important is material resources. That is an important thing. Now, what are the criteria that is needed? So here what we can think is that the criteria, when we think of these human resources, what are the criteria needed? When we think of the human resources, the first thing about the teachers, when we think about the teachers, what is important? That is the competence of the teacher is important, the commitment of the teacher is important, and the professional skills. All those things are very much important. So let us take the case of the competence of the teachers. That now the teacher's job is an important part that the teacher has to concentrate. The next comes the commitment on the part of the teachers. Just when they are getting salary, whether they are able to manage the commitment or the devotion and the accountability of the teachers are very much important in the case of the commitment of teachers. So here what is important is the accountability and the responsibility of the teachers. It gives more important aspect. Then the professional skills. We know that as teachers, the qualification alone will not make the teachers enough. So what is needed? In the case of the qualifications, they need some kind of professional skills. Take the case of the school context or the teaching context. What is important? The teaching skills are very much important. So the professional skills is very much important on the part of the teachers. In that, the criteria, the resources can be divided into human resources, the material resources, and the financial resources. Coming to the material resources, what is important is the relevance. So whether the material that is going to purchase or that is going to order, it is relevant, or it is just showing that the budget which is allotted is utilized, or whether it is utilized properly, that is an important thing. So the relevance is an important aspect. The next one, the remediation and enrichment. So here, whether the material resources can enrich the teaching learning process, that is an important aspect. And then the accessibility, whether the resources is accessible to all, or just it is putting in the lab and just it is like a showcase thing. Whether the learners can access and use it, whether in the teaching learning process we can use it. The next criteria, that is quality. The product, whether the affordability, when we think of the affordability, the budget that is provided may be meager. So within that, whether the material can be purchased or not. Then comes the financial resources. Regarding the financial resources, when we think of these financial resources, what is important is the allocation of the budget, the proper utilization of the budget, and we know that among many items, we have to select the most appropriate one. So the check-in selection, what is important? The legitimacy. That is an important aspect that should be given importance. And when, as a head of the school, what is the role of the head of the school in the selection of the different kinds of resources? As a head of the school, the first thing, the need assessment should be done. What is important there? So the need assessment part is very much important in the case of the identification and selection of resources. Each classroom or each subject wise, what are the needs to be satisfied, and based on that, the material should be purchased. So the need assessment is an important part, and then the selection of the resources. So this is an important aspect when we think of how to purchase the resources. Then the item which is most needed or which is actually in use, that is an important aspect when we think of the selection of the resources. So here, when we think of the different kinds of resources, there may be resources where in classroom situation, the head of the school may not be utilizing the resources. So in such cases, what is important is that in classroom situation, whether the teacher is utilizing, suppose there are a lot of maps, globes, everything. So the different varieties of maps, the physical map, the geographical maps, so the weather maps, so different types of maps may be there. So whether it is utilizing according to the topic, that is an important thing, should be kept in mind. And next one, what we have to think is that the strategy for the regular supply of materials. There are different strategies that can be adopted. So many times what is happening is that the head of the institution in the beginning of the year may take the need assessment, and then they may decide which material is very much needed. And by the time they put the order for that, and then for purchasing, they may send that order. So what is happening when the material comes? One academic year will be over. So it cannot be utilized for that academic year. So what is important here? What are the strategies to be adopted for the regular supply of materials? The first strategy, that is purposefulness. Purposefulness, here it means the material which is purchased, it should have a purpose in the sense that it should be used in the teaching learning process. The second strategy, that is clarity. So when the demand is made, so the objects, what are the objects needed? Different kinds of objects. How to use it? Suppose in a psychological lab, the stethoscope we are purchased. So without knowing how to handle the instrument, that is a waste only thing. So the clarity is needed. And the next one, the promptness. As I told that promptness is an important matter in the case of the selection of the resources. Then comes the quality consciousness. What type of quality standards that we are keeping? Just for the sake of reducing the expenses, we cannot purchase low quality products. So the many things when we purchase the quality products, the expectancy or the tenure of using, the duration will be increasing. So here the quality is an important thing when we purchase any resources. So here identify the resources and how to select the resource. That is the main duty of the head of the institution. So here we can see a community purpose, whether it can be used any resources from the community, we can use it in the classroom, we can think of. And more than that, a cooperative effort on the part of the principal and the teachers, it is needed. So what is important here is that the cooperative effort is very much needed. So the beginning of the academic year, when we take the order, we have to fulfill what type of order we are giving and how we are going to purchase that thing and when the material will reach. This is an important thing when we think of these different kinds of the resources. Next, we are going to discuss about the role of the school head in the identification and selection of resources. As stated earlier, the first role is the need assessment. What are the things or whichever as it is finished, so what thing should be ordered? So at what time? It should be ordered ahead of the beginning of the academic year, so that it can be used in a particular class. So as the head of the institution, the main thing is that to check whichever materials are in higher need, and then what about the existing resources, whether it needs some kind of maintenance, repairing, or whether it is projector. So when the projector is not working, just purchasing the projector is a waste. So what is important is that the proper utilization of the resources is very much important. And then as the head of the institution, what is they have to keep in mind is that the different subjects need different types of resources. We cannot state that the one type of resources can be utilized for all. If it is available for all the subjects, then selection of the resources is an important task on the part of the head of the institution. Let us take the physical resources, that the physical resources need the space where the students want to develop holistically. That is an important thing. And then the case of the human resources, we can think that the qualified person should be there, not only the teachers. Nowadays, the digital context, we need the skills, the digital skills, the persons who know how to handle the digital aspects. That is also an important thing when we think of the different kinds of resources. So here we have discussed about the human resources, the physical resources, the material resources, and the financial resources. So now there should be another email. The space is reducing. So how to increase the space? So what all things should be digitalized? We know that the learning management system now the school is utilizing. So in such cases, the storage capacity of the digital equipments, that is very much important. So all these things, the clearance, everything is very much important. And more than that, the financial resources, the budget approval, it takes a lot of time. So when we think of the purchasing as a head of the school, the purchasing of the things, the budget should be approved ahead. So the promptness of purchasing the material resources is important aspect when we think of these financial resources. There should not be any block or heater that it needs a lot of approvals. So what is important is that the resources should be available for its proper utilization and execution in the teaching learning process. So here the resources play an important role. We know that the teaching learning resources, it supplements the lecture method and it gives the clarity on the part of learners. When they see, they can study. So why we use the PPT along with the verbal explanation? So that we can use more senses. And when we utilize more senses, it gives for the retention of learning on the part of the learners. So retention of learning is an important thing, and for this purpose, different kinds of resources should be utilized. So as the head of the school, we can see that the major part of the head of the school is to provide the resources at the apt time for the effective use. So as the head of the schools, they should be prompt enough to take the order and supply the apt resources, quality resources